Hello, boys and girls. Today, Katherine is going to make Rough Puff Pastry. Now, this is slightly different to the short crust pastry we made before, which is on YouTube. This one is Rough Puff Pastry. It has a little bit more fat in it. Short crust pastry is 2 to 1. This one is a little bit more. So my utensils, I'm going to use a rolling pin. I'm going to use a wooden spoon, a knife. I'm going to use some ingredients, then I'm going to use some water. I'm going to use some flour, some plain flour. Now we're making pastry, so it's plain flour and a block of margarine. So I'm going to sieve my flour. Okay, so I should have said I'm using a sieve as well. I'm going to sieve my flour. I'm going to get 2 cups, right? And I have the flour. This is plain flour here that I can use. I'm going to use the back of my knife, the same as we always do. And we're just going to measure that off. So that's 1 cup of flour. And I'm going to get another cup of flour. Do that very well, so I'm going to have to use a smaller cup just to fill it up. Always make sure you fill it up, and with the back of the knife go into the back, and there you have your 2nd cup of flour. So I'm going to sieve that, get nice air into it. When you're making pastry, it's all about keeping it cold and keeping it airy. Right, and here then is my block of margarine. So I'm going to take about 1/4 of the block and I'm going to break it up into pieces and I'm going to rub it into the margarine. Okay, just going to make breadcrumbs out of this, you know the way we do it, and it's just like breadcrumbs. So you're lifting it up and you're rubbing it in. So it's about 50 grams, I suppose, but it doesn't really matter. About 1/4 of the block. And I'm squeezing and I'm rubbing it between my fingers and keeping it cool, and I'm getting lots of air into it. And you can do it like this as well. You can just rub it between your hands. It's nice to be able to make good pastries. Okay, so that is just rubbed in like breadcrumbs, and then I'm just going to either break off, kind of, we call them walnut size pieces of the margarine. You can either break it off or do it like I'm doing it with the knife. Okay, and we'll break it up more with our fingers in a minute. So they're like about the size of a walnut, a small piece of the margarine. We're going to use the whole block. So it's 2 cups and a block of margarine, or in old measurements it would be 10 and 8. 10 ounces of flour and 8 ounces of margarine. Okay, so I'll break it up a bit. So there you see, it's quite lumpy. I haven't rubbed that in. So now I'm going to put in some cold water, and be slow about the water because you don't want to put in too much. You just want it a little bit sticky. But not too sticky that to stick to everything. You want it to be able to come away from your hands. I'm just going to put in another little drop. Still quite dry, as you see there, so I'm going to put in another little bit. Okay, you can see now it's coming into one lump. Can you see? But it's not, you see, it's not really sticking to my hands. And that's the way you want it. Okay, so that's it in one lump like that. So now I'm going to put a little bit of flour, and I'm still using plain flour. You can do this with your hands, or I just have a handy sieve there. And I'm going to turn it out on there. Okay. So this is going to be rough puff pastry. So watch me carefully now. I make it into a kind of a long, we call it an oblong piece. Put a bit of flour onto your hands like that, and you can see. Now the important thing about this is we're going in the one direction all of the time. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So we're just going to put a little bit of flour on that, and I give it a few bangs like that so you have a kind of a ripple effect. Can you see it? And the reason you're doing that is you're trapping air in it. So gently then, really gently, you see, I'm barely catching it. Now a little bit, if it gets a little bit wet like that, just put on some more flour. Not too much flour now because we don't want to damage the ratio. Right, and I'm going to roll it out like that. Now my hands are a little bit sticky, so I'm actually going to wash them. Again, we know we can't wash our hands often enough, and it gives me a chance to get my sleeves up as well. So then, like an envelope, I'm going to roll it up from the bottom, and you've divided it into about thirds. Roll up from the bottom and down from the top, and you make a kind of an envelope. Okay? And turn to your left. Right, turn to your left. And again, I'm going to do the thing with the pockets, just a few bumps on it to trap the air. And you'll find as you go, it's getting easier to roll. If you're having difficulty, put it into the fridge for 15-20 minutes. Okay, so up a third, down a third, and turn to the left. Okay. So that's 2 rollings. This is number 3. And you will see as you go that the margarine is starting, I don't know if you can see that there now, starting to spread out like shapes, like a map of a country out along it. And that means you're getting, instead of rubbing in the butter or margarine with your hands, you're doing it with the rolling pin. So it's a rough puff pastry. It's not quite puff pastry, it's a rough puff pastry. There's a little something there. Okay, and turn to the left again. So now I've rolled it 3 times. So if you think it's enough, you can go ahead and make something out of it. But I usually do it 5 times. You always do it an uneven number of times because it rises better if you do. And you can see it's coming together now, and it's getting really nice and solid. Look, see? Up a third, down a third, turn to the left. Okay, so that's 4 times. So 1 more time. And now I have a nice bit of elasticy pastry. So at this stage, when you have your pastry made, there's a beautiful piece of pastry, You pop it into put it on a plate, pop it into your fridge, cover it with cling or with a cloth, or even the margarine paper here will do. Cover it like that and leave it get nice and cold for you to use later on. Okay, so we'll be back with our rough puff pastry to make something nice later on.